Let's start with preparing your database. The better structured your database is, the more IronSpeed Designer will be able to do for you. In particular, IronSpeed Designer will generate more web pages for you. The web pages it generates will be more sophisticated. Many people are surprised to learn that every page IronSpeed Designer generates is or can be a master detail or parent-child page. Also, if you start with a properly structured database, it'll be a lot easier to extend your application because you won't have to be going back to Designer to rework individual pages if you've changed your schema. And because your schema is well prepared, you won't have to be moving data from one table to the other as you alter that schema. Now, the first step is really to create child tables to express the one-to-many relationships in your database. IronSpeed Designer uses these child tables to generate master detail or parent-child pages. Let me give you an example of a one-to-many relationship. In an order entry system, you might have a customer table and an orders table. There's a one-to-many relationship between customers and order. One customer can have many orders. Similarly, one order can have many line item details. So there's an example of a parent-child-grandchild relationship. One customer, many orders, one order, many line item details. DBAs call this the process of normalizing your database. Step 2 is to create separate lookup tables for data entry. For example, suppose you have a shipper field in your order table. Now, that could be a simple text field, and people can type in whatever they want. But you'll get some drift over time when people use different terms to express the same shipper. They might, for example, enter Federal Express, FX, FedEx, Federal X, and so forth, all to represent Federal Express. Instead, it's better if you create a separate lookup table with one entry for Federal Express, one entry for UPS, one for U.S. Postal Service, and so forth. IronSpeed Designer, when it generates your application, will automatically join to this lookup table and create a drop-down list for you on any data entry form that uses that table. Moreover, for display purposes, for example, in table and record panels, it again will join to that lookup table to display not the ID value of the lookup, for example, 3 for Federal Express, but rather the English or text string associated with that ID, for example, FedEx or UPS. This is another example of normalizing your database. Step 3 is to create database views to express any multi-table join or complex query, such as a nested query, disjunctive queries with ors, nots, distincts, things like that. Now, you typically create these queries using Microsoft Enterprise Manager for SQL Server or, for example, Toad for Oracle and so forth. Some examples of database views might be current quarter sales, where you have an implied filter based on today's date. So you're looking back only to the beginning of the quarter. Similarly, another database view might be paid invoices, where there's a built-in filter or where clause that's filtering based on the status of a particular field, for example, indicating whether the invoice has been paid or not. Now, you can do some simple views like this in IronSpeed Designer, but at the end of the day, IronSpeed Designer is not a query construction tool. It's an application generator. So we think the best practice really is to use the right tool for the job. Use your database schema manager to create database views, and then let IronSpeed Designer generate an application against those views, just like it does with database tables. Next, you should declare primary keys in your database, and we believe you should do that for every table. We think that's best practice. If a table has a primary key, then IronSpeed Designer can generate a certain set of pages that it can't otherwise create. For example, show record, and edit table pages all require a primary key. That's so that IronSpeed Designer at runtime, the application at runtime, can fetch individual records, let you edit those records, and then insert them back into the database. Now, in the case of database views, you may not be permitted to modify your database, or you may not have primary keys already declared in your database for things like database views or some selected tables. Not to worry, you can create a virtual primary key in IronSpeed Designer, where basically you designate a field to be used as a primary key. Of course, that field really does need to function as a primary key, so it should be unique. You create a virtual primary key either in the application wizard, in the keys step, or by selecting the database's pull-down menu and new virtual primary key. Similarly, you should declare foreign keys in your database to establish the one-to-many table relationships we spoke about a few minutes ago. That's actually what IronSpeed Designer uses to build the master detail or parent-child pages. And without those foreign key declarations in your database, it can't create those master detail pages. An example of this, again, is the relationship between the customer and the order table, and the order table and the line item detail table. Now, again, if you have a database view or you're not permitted to modify your database and don't have established foreign key relationships, you can use a virtual foreign key in IronSpeed Designer to instruct IronSpeed Designer to treat a pair of fields in two tables as if they constitute a foreign key relationship, even though they're not expressly declared as such in your database. And you create the virtual foreign key in IronSpeed Designer the same way you do with the virtual primary key, either through the application wizard's key step or through the database's pull-down menu.